You've got the perfect floral arrangements picked out. The catering menu is totally set, and you are just deeply, entirely in love.
Right, the dopamine is just flowing.
Exactly. It's that huge honeymoon high. But then, sitting right across from your actual soulmate, you realize you have to plan exactly how you're going to divide up all your assets, just in case you eventually end up completely despising each other. Welcome to the ultimate modern romance paradox.
It really is a profound cognitive dissonance, isn't it? I mean, we are socialized from birth to view marriage as this unbreakable emotional bond. But at the same time, we're legally blinding ourselves inside a really highly structured financial institution.
Yeah.
And trying to reconcile those two realities, well, that is exactly where most couples just hit a massive wall.
Oh, absolutely. And that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're exploring a really comprehensive guide on how to navigate this incredibly fragile conversation without actually destroying your relationship in the process.
Which is the goal, right?
Right. And just to be clear up front, we are completely skipping the dictionary definition of what a prenup is. If you're listening to this deep dive right now, you already know it's a legal asset agreement.
Yeah, we don't need to rehash the basics.
Exactly. Our mission today is to decode the actual mechanics of the conversation itself, because our sources today make a really compelling argument. They argue that navigating this awkwardness successfully, it actually proves that financial clarity is a cornerstone of modern emotional connection. I love when these supposedly taboo topics get a really practical step-by-step breakdown.
And the paradigm shift there, it really starts with understanding the sort of hidden mechanism of marriage that, frankly, most people just completely ignore.
Oh, the default laws.
Yes. When couples avoid the prenup conversation because it feels, unromantic or awkward, they're operating under a totally false assumption. They think that by not signing a prenup, they're just opting out of a legal contract altogether.
Like they're keeping it pure.
Exactly. But the stark reality of family law is that if you do not draft your own prenuptial agreement, the state you live in has actually already drafted one for you.
Wait, really?
Yeah. You are getting a prenup either way. The only choice you really have is whether you and your partner sit down and write the rules, or whether some judge and a bunch of state legislators dictate those rules by default if things go south.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because realizing that you are literally defaulting to state law, that completely changes the framing of the whole thing.
It totally flips it.
Right. You aren't introducing a sterile contract into this pure, contract-free romance. You're simply choosing to customize an existing legal framework so it actually fits your specific relationship. It's kind of like buying travel insurance for your honeymoon.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, like you don't want your luggage to get lost, right? You're not planning on it, but you're smart enough to know you need a backup plan just in case.
What's fascinating here is that customizing that framework, building that backup plan, is rapidly becoming the cultural standard. We are witnessing a massive demographic shift in who is actually getting married these days and, when they're doing it.
Right, because the old stereotype is pretty outdated now.
Completely. Decades ago, the cultural stereotype of a prenup was, the 80-year-old billionaire trying to protect his empire from a 20-something.
Classic movie trope.
Exactly. But today, we have an explosion of dual-income households. People are marrying much later in life. They are not starting from zero together in their late teens anymore.
Right. They're merging two fully established lives.
Yeah. They're coming to the table with independent 401ks, real estate, maybe some hefty student loan debts, or even shares in a small family business.
The math of getting married is just fundamentally changed, and our sources highlight just how mainstream this customization has actually become. We're seeing a huge surge in content around this.
Oh, everywhere.
Yeah, YouTube guides titled things like Prenup Talk Without Drama are pulling in massive viewership. And you look at social media trends driven by hashtags like #ModernLove and #PrenupTalk, it really shows that this is a massive cultural shift. People are actively seeking out frameworks for these discussions.
They are. And what that shows is an underlying evolution in how we actually define romance itself. For generations, the cultural gold standard for romance was just blind faith.
Just jump and hope for the best.
Exactly. The ultimate declaration of love was jumping out of an airplane together and just sort of assuming a parachute would magically materialize.
Which, looking back, seems completely wild.
It looks reckless today. Modern couples are redefining romance to actually require transparency. They're essentially saying, hey, I respect you enough to show you my entire financial reality, my liabilities, my weird debts, and my anxieties about the future.
Going back to that travel insurance analogy for a second, you don't purchase the insurance because you plan on getting food poisoning in Italy.
Ah,
You buy it because the underlying anxiety of what if acts like this heavy mental tax. Once the insurance is in place, you can actually relax and enjoy the trip so much more deeply because you know the catastrophic downside is covered. A prenup operates on that exact same psychological mechanism.
it does. The security of the insurance provides the baseline for the enjoyment of the trip. But the irony, and this is a big one, is that while the insurance ultimately brings peace of mind, the act of purchasing it can be brutal.
Oh, yeah, the actual conversation.
Yeah, talking about what happens if things go horribly wrong can be so highly charged that it threatens the trip before you even pack your bags. The friction doesn't usually come from the concept of a prenup itself. It stems almost entirely from the execution.
Which means we really need to look at the execution strategy today, starting with timing. Because you can have the most rational, legally sound reasons in the universe, but if you drop this topic at the wrong moment, you are no longer having a collaborative discussion.
No, you're triggering a total survival response in your partner.
Exactly. So, when does the source actually suggest opening this door?
The guide identifies 3 optimal timing windows. And the first one is incredibly specific, early in the engagement. Basically, the window opens the exact moment the decision to marry is solidified.
Okay, I have to challenge that a bit on behalf of anyone listening who is currently in that phase.
Sure.
Because early in the engagement is the absolute peak of the honeymoon high. You just called your parents, you're posting the ring photos on Instagram, the champagne is literally still flowing.
Yeah.
Doesn't bringing up a dense legal contract right after saying yes completely kill the vibe.
I get that. It feels jarring because it interrupts that sort of fairy tale emotional narrative. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, avoiding the topic until later is actually what kills the vibe. It's the most dangerous thing you can do.
Really? Worse than ruining the champagne toast.
Yes, because the second optimal window the source explicitly notes is before wedding planning gets intense. Bringing up a prenup early is kind of like putting on your seatbelt before you pull the car out of the driveway. It's a quick, mundane action. But waiting until the guest list is finalized and the massive catering deposits are due, that is like trying to put your seatbelt on while the car is hydroplaning.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense. Because the cognitive load of wedding planning is already just so overwhelming.
It's a second full-time job for a lot of people.
It really is. You're navigating incredibly tricky family politics, you're managing a huge event budget, and you're dealing with extreme decision fatigue. If you wait until that pressure cooker is at absolute maximum capacity to introduce a dense, emotionally loaded legal document, the emotional bandwidth required to process it simply does not exist.
It doesn't. And the human brain under stress defaults to a threat response. If you introduce a prenup weeks before a wedding, you actually trigger what behavioral economics calls the endowment effect.
The endowment effect, can you explain that?
Sure. It means your partner already psychologically owns the wedding. The invitations are out, the dress is bought. By introducing a new massive condition to the marriage, that late in the game, it no longer feels like a mutual planning exercise.
It feels like an ultimatum.
Exactly. It feels like you are threatening to take the wedding away unless they comply with your terms. It breeds immense tension and makes the whole agreement feel inherently coercive.
It essentially becomes a hostage situation, like, hey, sign this or face the absolute social humiliation of canceling a 300-person event.
Which completely destroys trust right out of the gate.
Yeah, I can see how that would be disastrous, but there is a third timing window, the source suggests, right? One that bypasses the wedding stress entirely.
Yes, and it's probably my favorite. Anchoring the prenup to organic existing financial conversations.
So tying it to things you're already talking about.
Exactly. This is the most frictionless approach.
Yes.
Say you are already sitting down on Sunday morning looking at your joint savings goals, or you're discussing how you want to structure a down payment on a new house.
You're already in that headspace.
Right. You are already in a collaborative, analytical mindset. Introducing the prenup in that specific context frames it as just another piece of your overall financial architecture as a team. It's not some standalone accusation out of nowhere.
Okay, so you've secured the timing. The environment is low stress. Now comes the really hard part, the actual phrasing and the physical setting, because the words you use and where you physically sit when you say them, that dictates whether your partner hears a loving proposal or a straight-up threat.
Setting is huge.
The source is adamant about choosing a relaxed, private setting. But let's go beyond just saying, don't do it at a loud restaurant. What are the actual psychological stakes of the venue here?
Public spaces naturally trigger defensive posturing. When humans feel vulnerable or challenged, the presence of an audience, even if it's just an audience of strangers at a crowded restaurant, forces the ego to engage.
Oh, because you don't want to lose face.
Exactly. If your partner feels surprised or hurt by the topic, being in a public space actively prevents them from processing those emotions safely. They have to suppress their natural reaction just to maintain social decorum.
Which means they swallow the hurt.
Yes, and that swallowed hurt turns instantly into quiet resentment. Privacy strips away the performative aspect of the conversation. It lets them react authentically.
So what does this all mean in practice? It means you have to treat this conversation with the exact same environmental respect as the proposal itself.
That's a great way to put it.
It requires total privacy, zero time constraints, and a complete absence of distractions. Put the phones away. And the script you use to open the dialogue is critical. I want to highlight an exact quote from the source here because I feel like the phrasing is highly engineered.
Let's hear it.
The guide suggests saying exactly this. Let's plan for a secure future together and make sure we're both protected no matter what.
It is highly engineered. Analyze the mechanics of that one sentence. Let's, together, we're both protected. It aggressively centers the partnership.
It's all-inclusive pronouns.
Right. Because the fastest way a prenup conversation derails is when one partner feels like the other is just building a fortress to keep them out. That specific script instantly disarms the threat response by positioning the two of you inside the fortress together. You are building the walls together to protect your shared unit from the unpredictable outside world.
It's a complete paradigm shift, really, from protection against you to protection with you.
Exactly.
But, I mean, let's be real. Even with the perfect script and the perfect setting, things can still go wrong. I imagine the biggest trap people fall into is treating this whole thing like a corporate merger. You know, just sliding a printed contract across the kitchen table and saying, hey, look at the math. Logically, this makes sense.
Logic is the absolute wrong tool for an emotional reaction. When one person initiates this topic, the other person is almost certainly going to experience a spike in cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Right. Because money is deeply tied to our basic survival instincts, our sense of security, and often our family trauma. A perfectly logical, mathematically fair contract might feel like a harsh personal rejection to a partner who, say, grew up with a lot of financial instability.
This raises an important question, though, about how to handle the immediate fallout if your partner does react poorly. Because if they get defensive or if they start crying, the instinct for the person who brought it up is usually to double down on the logic, right? To prove they aren't the bad guy.
Oh, absolutely. And doubling down is a critical mistake. This raises an important question about the role of empathy in these moments. The source emphasizes that you must prioritize empathy over control.
How so?
Active listening is the only way through that initial friction. You have to validate their fear without necessarily conceding your boundary about needing the agreement. You have to acknowledge that the topic is scary.
So you don't just keep pushing the paperwork.
No, in fact, the guide explicitly advises taking deliberate breaks if emotions run high. Pausing a conversation when heart rates spike is a profound sign of emotional maturity. It's not a failure.
That's so true.
You simply say, I love you. I hear that this is overwhelming. Let's just table the logistics for tonight and just be together.
You're pacing the conversation to match their actual capacity to process it in that moment.
Exactly.
And that requires ensuring the agreement itself isn't just some one-sided dictatorship. Because if the document reads like a list of demands where one person retains all the assets and the other absorbs all the risk, literally no amount of empathetic listening will save the relationship. Fairness has to be the foundation.
It really does. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the source makes a much bolder claim than just, how to survive the talk.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
It argues that discussing a prenup doesn't just prevent a negative outcome like a massive fight. It actively generates a highly positive one. It acts as an accelerant for long-term relationship health.
The guide actually proposes that the process of negotiating a prenup exercises the exact emotional muscles required for a successful marriage down the road. You are basically learning how to tackle incredibly difficult, high-stakes problems as a cohesive unit.
Think about it. Financial disagreements are consistently ranked as a primary driver of divorce. Always